Hello and welcome to a serious and frank discussion of the role of Kai Wynn in Deep Space Nine. I'm kidding. I'm sorry. If you were listening to the pre-show, you know why I said that. And if you weren't, why aren't you? Our pre-shows are great. You should listen to them. Anyway, hi, I'm Matt. This has been the Blizzard Watch podcast, and it still is. I don't know why I switched to the ending bit, but nope, we're doing more of it. With me, of course, are my co-hosts, Liz and Joe. It's late. I think all of us are a little loopy from tiredness, but we're going to get through this. Why don't we just start? I'm just going to straight up go with it. One of the first things that I wanted to mention, because it's the last thing that you mentioned in the email chain, is that faction tags are not going to be a thing in Dragonflight. If your horde, like this lovely Tauren I'm playing right now, and you see an alliance fighting a mob that's going to kill him, you can hit that mob and get credit for killing it.
I mean, you can also hit the mob now and save him, but you don't get quest credit for it.
Yeah, whereas now in Dragonflight, you will get quest credit.
Which is something a lot of players have been asking for a long, long time.
Yeah. I mean, there are some can do. Oh, go ahead, Liz. Sorry.
All I can say is it's about time. How long have we all been playing this game? Are we coming up on 18 years?
8,000 years.
It's about time. This is just such a straightforward convenience feature that makes life less annoying for all of us.
Yeah, and I know that there used to be some concerns with like, oh, it'll take some of the PvP elements out, but it's like, if people are in a PvP server or want to do world PvP, it's not going to stop them from doing that, right? And like for the rest of us, it's going to mean that I don't have to sit there and wait for a quest mob or a particular mob that I need for whatever I'm doing to respawn on whatever cycle it's supposed to be respawning on and hope I get the tag. Now I can just do it and move on, which is just a huge quality of life.
I mean, there are some caveats here. The first is that if you are in war mode, then you still do have faction tagging.
Which makes
Anybody
sense.
who's playing war mode has faction tagging. The second is that the cap on how many players can tag a mob is still 5.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's 5 from, it's 5 period, whereas before it would be 5 alliance or 5 horde. Now it's just 5. So if 2 horde are fighting a guy and 2 alliance show up and start helping him, and then another 3 horde show up, one of those 3 horde can get a tag. The other 2 can't.
Did we get an actual blog post about this? I only saw the tweet.
The one I saw was actually on Wowhead, I think. But at any rate, so those are the things to keep in mind. But I think it is, I generally have the same consensus as Liz and Joe. I think it has been a long time coming. It also goes along with the thing that Ian Hazakostas mentioned months ago now, talking about the Dragonflight Drakthir starting element and how they choose a faction. Unlike the Pandaren, it's not like it's not like 2 belligerent factions and they demand your allegiance. It's much more, well, do you want to hang out with these blood elves or do you want to hang out with these dwarves? That's basically it. It's just, those guys helped me and I like the cut of their jib, but those guys over there, yeah, they're okay too, but I'm going to go with these guys because, I like the pretty red color. And that's it. Like, it's not as aggressive. You're not going off to war with the other group. You just, I'm going to go with these guys. They look like more fun. Take it easy. And that's it. And that's all that they intend it to be. And I like that. I like that it's not this big deal, like, where you're choosing war against the other faction. It's just, we got to help somebody. It might as well be these guys. So I think that this goes along with that too.
It kind of goes back to the idea of factions like the Cenarian Circle and the Argent Crusade. It's like you can pledge yourself to the Argent Crusade and do Argent Crusade things, but that doesn't mean you hate the Cenarian Circle and you want to kill them. These are just different groups of people that believe in different things, and they're off doing their own thing, and maybe sometimes they'll come together and do things together, but, it's good.
Yeah, I definitely think it is a step in the right direction. But whilst we are talking about that, we don't, Liz, you pointed out, you pointed out that we don't know for sure. It's looking like Season 4 is going to be ending on October 25th. And
we know for sure that Season 4 is ending. What we don't know is carry on.
Yeah, we don't know for sure that the pre-patch for Dragonflight is going to be in that same week. I mean, it seems very likely that it'll be on October 25th, but we do not know for sure. It could be later than that. Going again back to Ian Hazakostas back in April, he made a point that when they did their pre-patch event, it was only going to be 2 weeks. Now, that doesn't mean that, that was April. Things change. It's been months. It's like half a year since April. It's quite possible they decided we're going to go with 4 weeks, or maybe they do still mean 2 weeks. So maybe for 2 weeks after October 25th, there's going to be no season and nothing to replace it. I don't know.
I mean, which wouldn't surprise me considering and how much they're working on in the background and how much they're trying to get done, especially now that we know when Dragonflight's releasing, like taking time off from a season and being able to better fine tune things that they, and putting those resources that they may be putting on for seasonal stuff and making those adjustments and making sure those are working well and making sure that the final polish is put on. It makes sense.
And this also segues into something else. Ironically, I wrote the article and then completely forgot that I'd written it. So I saw it reposted today. I was like, oh, wow, Winds of Wisdom. I didn't even look at who wrote it. And then you said that was actually last week. And I looked and like, oh, yeah, like this clever and handsome writer said it was last week. But regardless, the Winds of Wisdom buff has been around for about a week now. Again, according to that handsome guy who wrote that article. And it's basically probably going to be live till at least October 25th. Because
I believe they specifically said it was live until pre-patch. So selfishly, I want the pre-patch to be later than the 25th, but that's just me.
Yeah, no, I could see wanting that. But at any rate, it's still going right now. So if you want to take advantage of it, as we do this podcast, we're recording it on October 12th. So you have 13 days till the 25th. For sure, you have at least 13 days to make use of that buff. Maybe longer if it doesn't actually go live on the 25th, but if it does, you've got 13. That's like a little bit under 2 weeks. So if you've got a character you were meaning to get leveled and you just hadn't done it yet, you've got that amount of time for sure.
It's pretty speedy.
More. Yeah.
Pretty speedy, so get on it.
But I mean, go ahead.
I don't know if I'm going to manage to finish leveling my Warlock in that time, because I just rolled it and I'm like, yeah, I'm going to Winds of Wisdom this thing and zoom, and I'm level 22, and so I don't know if that's going to work out.
How long have you played on your Warlock at this point?
Not long.
22 after not long is not bad. You probably could hit it.
I probably could if I really work at it. I just don't know. There's a chance I'm just going to run out of steam and be like, okay, I'm tired of this Warlock thing, whatever.
Yeah, I tried doing the same thing with the Tauren Warrior. I got him up to level 30, and then I just said, no, I'm done. And I used my free character boost on him.
It has been so long since I've leveled a character from scratch. It's been literally years. It may have been mists that I last leveled a character from scratch. I mean, it's all been using my boosts and, up leveling characters that I've rolled far, far, far in the past.
Yeah.
And so this is a weird experience.
Yeah, I did it. The last time I did it was Legion, but it was actually the pre-Legion event, which was, you remember those invasions with all the XP?
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I got that character to max level in 2 days. It took nothing. I was just kept showing up for the fights. You don't even have to stay alive. You could die. It didn't matter as long as they were killing stuff around you. Just wait till you get up. Wait till they kill everything, then get up. You get the XP. So yeah, that was the last time I did it, and I don't think it's the same as really leveling through questing and doing stuff.
Yeah, what I found out is you don't get flying until level 30. Which, I mean, that's totally reasonable. We never got flying until we leveled a little in the past. But I am so used to flying everywhere, and now I'm on the ground everywhere, and it's terrible. So, yeah I need to at least get 8 more levels so I can fly. That's my goal, minimally.
Yeah, I believe you can fly.
I do also like that song as well, yes.
See, this is why I like Lower Decks so much. I am just walking weird reference. But we should also talk, therefore, about... there's quite a bit to talk about with Overwatch 2, but neither Joe or I are playing it. And I don't think, Liz, you've had much chance to play it.
No, I'm just not big on first-person shooters. It's not my thing.
So we can talk about the fact that I guess there's been somewhat of a rough launch.
Yeah,
for the game.
There's been a number of issues with it. I mean... I know of one thing, but which I'll let you guys go first.
Well, Liz, do you want to? or do you want me to?
I think Rough Launch is putting it a little mildly. It's been buggy. A couple of days ago, we had emergency maintenance at 8 p.m. on like a Monday. It was either Monday or Tuesday. I think it was Monday. And it's like, there was a thing where reportedly people were like, if you were in the store and you hit your space bar or something, like if you were typing something, it would buy things.
Yeah, the auto chat bug, the auto purchase bug, which they did patch. It was actually something that they did fix.
They did patch, but there are no refunds for it. So if you accidentally bought a bunch of things in the Overwatch store due to a bug, you still have those things whether you want them or not.
Now, there's two things to specify with that. That's actually the one thing that I was aware of. This is purchases with in-game currency. And not real world dollary dues.
Okay, that's better.
But it's still kind of I wanted to color that and make sure that information was given. But it was basically it used the legacy credits, and I think that's where the problem comes in, because it was purchases of around like 300 legacy credits or so. Because I think that's what most people were carrying over. Once they're gone, and I don't think they have the tools anymore to re-enable it. And instead of saying it, they're just saying no refunds. Once you buy them, they're meant to be unlocked forever, which is not good, especially when it's their bug that caused it. So yeah, and this has been for about 5 days now. So they fixed it on 10/7. At the time of this recording, it is now October 12th. Yep. So they did fix it, but it's still kind of just a bad line in the sand to draw.
Well, and I've read about all sorts of purchase bugs. I've been kind of watching the forums just to keep on top of this.
Oh, those are on fire.
The technical support forums, which are pretty, they're a lower level of fire, but they're still pretty fire. There are a lot of people missing cosmetics that they had previously unlocked.
Yep.
There are people reporting that you buy the battle pass and you spend the money to buy the battle pass and you don't get the battle pass. There is apparently a bug that makes it not work on consoles at all for some people, which last I checked, that was a thread with about 30,000 views, and that was a few days ago.
Yep.
There is a bug that makes it not work on Intel i3 processors for some people, and one of the fixes that Blizzard suggested was like go into your BIOS and turn off hyper-threading. And that just seems like such an extreme thing to do. It's like, to make our game run, you just have to edit your BIOS a little bit. And they even warn you in there that, like, this is not a Blizzard supported thing, and it just sounds real sketchy. But all of those are things that Blizzard acknowledges that they've had a lot of reports on. So that's not just, one person said this. These are like real things that a lot of people are having trouble with.
I know
there's the fact that Bastion and Torbjorn are both not currently working.
And not only, I think they fixed Bastion. Yeah, I don't know about Torbjorn, but I think they fixed Bastion. There's also the other one where a lot of people were coming over, and you were supposed to, if you were a person that purchased Overwatch 1, you're supposed to have all of the characters that existed in Overwatch 1 that you had unlocked in Overwatch 2. And there's a large number of people that I personally know that logged into Overwatch 2 and still don't have them unlocked. It's treating them as if it's a brand new account from the ground up. They don't have their legacy credits. They don't have any of the skins they unlocked. Like, there's some weird stuff still going on with it. So
yeah, basically what we're saying is Overwatch is in rough shape. I know one thing that actually happened. I saw this on Twitter. One of the hosts of Outside Xbox tweeted that her Overwatch just updated to Overwatch 2 without her asking it on her console. A lot of people weren't. I mean, that makes sense because Overwatch 2 is basically built on Overwatch. Yeah.
Overwatch 1 does not exist anymore.
Yeah.
It is all Overwatch 2 and everything hurts.
And
you have no choice.
And here's my thing is, I think that's part of the problem, is because originally I think they were working on a brand new system, a brand new like game engine for Overwatch 2. And then somewhere along the lines they stopped. We talked about this like 3 weeks ago.
A while ago. Yeah.
Yeah. And like, that was one of the big things that, like, when they first announced Overwatch 2 that Kaplan was talking about and they were very excited about, and, and then it just kind of stopped talking. But when you do that, when you try to expand one game engine to do more things maybe that it wasn't intended to do, you start having problems like this. And especially if you're retrofitting things that were created for a different engine into it, you see it all the time with people that like try to bolt things onto Unity or bolt things onto Unreal in older versions of it with newer assets. Like there's just all sorts of weird tomfoolery that happens. So I wouldn't be surprised if that's part of it.
Yeah,
I mean the messaging has been super weird about what Overwatch 2 is. I believe originally when they were doing this, it's like, okay, if you have Overwatch 1, you can still play Overwatch 1, or you can get Overwatch 2 and you have access to all this new stuff. Like there was a continuation that was described, but now it's just like Overwatch 1 is gone and it's all Overwatch 2, which in a lot of ways makes sense. Like from a game development standpoint, you only have to maintain one game, one code base. It makes a lot of sense for everyone to be playing Overwatch 2 now, but I don't think that was ever clearly communicated. And it's definitely different than what Blizzard said in the beginning.
Yeah, and I think that's always been my problem with it too. Like I was really excited about Overwatch 2 when it first came out, but like that mixed messaging or lack of messaging, and then when there was messaging, lack of consistent messaging, really kind of like just threw up a whole bunch of red flags. So it's, I don't know, like I feel sad about this. I'll be perfectly honest, because I really enjoyed Overwatch. I enjoyed the world that they built. I enjoyed everything about it. I enjoyed the enthusiasm that, you know, folks playing it were feeling. Like my local gaming group and I dumped hundreds and hundreds of hours, you know, sitting on Discord or, you know, and playing it, or, you know, hell, the one year we did Extra Life and we did a 24-hour stream, and that was the most requested and donated for game that we did. So there's a lot of like fond memories with it. And then to see what's happening with it now, it just kind of, I don't know, it just makes me feel sad. I want it to be good.
I think a lot of the transitionatory stuff makes more sense if you assume that Overwatch 2 was going to be a paid game. So then you would kind of have to do this continuation where maybe some people wanted to keep playing Overwatch 1 and some people would buy Overwatch 2, but then they decided it was going to be free to play, and it's had this kind of weird merging of concepts that weren't ever meant to fit together, but now they have to.
Yep. Yeah. So I think that pretty much covered it. I will mention briefly, Marvel Snap is getting its targeted card acquisition that everybody wanted. Basically, you don't have to just count on fate. You can actually get the cards you want to get. So I think that's a good change for the game. I have not gotten to play Marvel Snap yet, despite our really fun talk with Ben Brode, which was a very fun talk. You could go back and get that episode and listen to it. It was cool. So
I like to think in a small way we helped make that change happen, because that's one of the things we talked about with Ben Brode.
Yep, it absolutely is.
I mean, one of the reasons that you haven't had a chance to play the game is because the game is, and everyone will be able to play and will be able to check out the new card acquisition method, which, yeah, I mean, that's all I got to say is it's good to be able to like specifically work towards getting the cards you want and not have it be all random.
Yeah, I mean, some randomness is fine, but I mean, I still remember the day that a kid walked into the bookstore I was working at, upended the entire display of Pokemon cards and began ripping the packages open looking for Charizard. And I'm like, dude, you can't do that. You now own all those packs that you just ripped open. That's like 30 packs. Even then, that wasn't cheap. They weren't $1 a piece. They were like, I think they were like $5 or $6 a piece. So he was spending money. His mom came in and was just like, oh wow, having to explain to this woman that her son has rung up like a $90 charge because he wants a small reptilian fire salamander thingy. That wasn't great. So yeah, I think generally speaking, there's we did a post about Diablo 2's ladder season. We did it last week after the previous podcast, so we didn't really mention it. Season 2 of Diablo 2 Resurrected's ladder season has started last week. It started on the 6th. So as of today, it's been out for 6 days.
And I've read that players have, unsurprisingly, already hit level 99.
Oh yeah, I'm not surprised.
Yeah.
Players are really good. Plus, they did make that change to allow people to level differently. The terror zones that came in with the patch that allowed ladder season to start. So yeah, that's not a tremendous surprise, but yeah, it's good. I think at this point you know what Diablo 2 is. Either you like Diablo 2 or you don't. The changes they've been making have really not done anything to make it feel like a different game, which I think is great. I think if they put in too many changes that felt really different, like they didn't belong in Diablo 2, that would be a mistake. But I think overall the development on Diablo 2 Resurrected has been pretty spot on, where they've put in changes, but those changes are things that, generally speaking, improve a player's experience without substantially changing the game. So yeah, I think that's pretty cool. What else? Liz, you wrote some stuff in here. I want to make sure. No, we mentioned that thing. The faction tagging we mentioned. We have Winds of Wisdom patch date. Yeah, pre-patch.
You know, one of these days we're going to be organized enough about the podcast where we're going to have like a single email of topics instead of like 5 back and forths where we are all like remembering, oh, and don't forget this.
That will never ever happen.
One day, give me this, Matt. Let me have this dream of one day of this perfectly organized
I mean,
thing.
it's possible I will be sick for an entire week and you'll have to write the email in the first place, and then yeah, maybe, but I don't see how, as long as I'm the sucker writing the email, I don't see how this is going to work, because it's me and I'm terrible. So, but yeah, go ahead.
It's hard to keep all of this in your head. There's just a lot going on every week. And then I really feel like this entire decade, time has become harder to keep track of.
The fact that you can call it a decade, and you're right, and we're in a new decade, and I still don't feel like it's 2020 yet. I don't feel like 2020 even happened.
Or 2021, and now it's theoretically 2022, but time has completely stopped having any meaning, which it makes it genuinely difficult to remember what's happened in the last 7 days since we did the last podcast.
Not that we've ever been good at that, as Joe can attest.
It feels like it's gotten worse. Just not that we've gotten worse necessarily. I'm not attempting to criticize your podcast emails, but I think just time has gotten like gooey and confusing, and it's hard to remember. I wrote this post 5 days ago, and
go right ahead and criticize my podcast emails. It's not like they're good. It's just that they're like, oh, right, we need a podcast email. It's really weird to think about the fact that I have been doing podcasts for as long as I have. Like, I've been podcasting the entire time we've been on this site, and before that.
That's like, over a decade.
Yeah, over.
I don't remember when you first started on the WoW Insider podcast, but
it was fairly
it's been a while.
It was fairly early in its existence, because I was actually on it before the people that I ended up hosting it with. Like I ended up being on it with the first people who were on it, and then they left, and it was me and the 2 others, and then they left, and then it was me and Ann, and then we came over here, and it was me and Ann, and then Ann left, and then it was me and Joe, and then me and Joe were doing Lore Watch with Ann, and then it was just me and Joe and Lore Watch, and yeah, it's been a lot of podcasts, and stuff does run together in your head. Like it is very hard to even remember what format we use sometimes.
Oh, I still sometimes flow into, like, even before I was doing podcasts for like this site, like I was doing Raid Warning, and then I was doing For the Lore, which was existed before Lore Watch ever did. And like sometimes I fall into those habits, and it's been almost it's been almost 20 years.
Yeah, it's been a long time.
Oh boy.
But
yeah.
Time is wild.
I don't think we're going to do much with the Castle Cyangar thing here, because I don't think it's a news story at this point. I think it's more of like a WoW should steal this idea. And so what I'm going to do here is I'll just turn to you guys. Do you guys know the Castle Cyangar model at this point? I think Liz does. Joe, do you?
I don't really remember. Probably not.
So Liz, I'm just going to say to you, do you think WoW should steal this?
Absolutely. And I also want to point out that this is a Diablo Immortal mechanic. And I know we all feel pretty squicky about Diablo Immortal, but it has come up with a lot of good gameplay ideas that I just want other Blizzard games to just straight up steal.
So you can play them without feeling like, oh God, am I going to get sucked into some kind of real money vortex?
Or, constantly getting a pop-up saying, click here to claim your free daily reward.
Yeah. I honestly, I played Diablo Immortal for like a few months and liked it quite a bit. The fact that it took up so much space on my tablet was a problem. And the store was just so relentless. Like I never got a break from it. And that's what ultimately turned me away from it. I just simply couldn't. I simply wasn't comfortable playing it. but it was a mechanically fine game. Like there was nothing wrong with it in terms of it as a game, not it as a monetization system where there was lots wrong with it. As a game, I was having fun playing it. I didn't have any problem doing it. And I was doing it entirely, just what you could get playing it. I wasn't spending real money. But even that became like I felt like any moment that the cold hand of capitalism could come along and shear me like a sheep because they were just the drumbeat was so relentless. So yeah, I ultimately turned away from it. But the Castle Sayangar model, really quickly, it's basically like if you took like a procedurally generated roguelike dungeon and you stuck it into a character housing thing for your warband, which is essentially like a small guild of 8 people. It's like if your heroic dungeon group had a few alternates and formed just that as a small guild. That's what it's like. And they've been making changes to how the warbands work to make them friendlier for smaller groups of people. Like, so you don't have to have all 8 members of the warband in a run to get credit for the run for the warband. And you don't have to do the thing where at least one other member of the warband has to log on at 3 o'clock in the morning with you and just kill monsters to tick up a box to get a new warband. So all that's cool. Castle Sayangar basically takes the mechanics of it where you have a warband camp and makes it into this cool castle that you conquer. You go in, you kill the monsters, you take over the place, you assign characters to rooms, and then those rooms give them buffs, which is really cool. And then you basically have waves of invasions that happen there. So you have a group play aspect, a single player aspect, because the roguelike dungeon is absolutely a single player experience. It's kind of like Torghast meets original Diablo. Like if you ever ran the original Tristram Cathedral in Diablo, it's like that and Torghast at the same time, where it's all procedurally generated and it's all soloable, or you can have up to like, I think a group of up to 4 people can go in. I'm not sure if it's 4 or 8. I can't remember. But yeah, it's interesting, and it's something you could really do in Warcraft. Like you could broaden it out because it wouldn't have to be just one castle. It could be all these different places that you could go and clear. Like imagine if you could do that with like, Blackrock Depths.
Yeah, I'm thinking here, I remember a time when we were talking about player housing and you basically brought up this exact idea about conquering places in the world, and now they're your place and it's your home.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that I like about the Sayangar model, and I really wish that they would do it in WoW.
Although I will forever still think that WildStar had the best player housing ever, and Blizzard should steal that if they ever feel the need. Although Sayangar is definitely, from your description, pretty dang good.
Yeah, but the thing too is that you could have both, because you could have player housing, which is a player's house, and then you'd have this, which is your guild group hangout. So it's not exactly the same thing. So I definitely think there's room for improvement and so forth. But
yeah, I think it's really interesting that like your castle has different rooms and each room has like stuff. It has buffs that it can give players, and like the guild leader, assigns everyone a room so everyone gets. I just think that's a really interesting like meta game aspect of it.
We used to have something
the other thing
similar
about that too.
Sorry, go ahead.
There's another thing about it in that you can also, as you're clearing the dungeons below, you gain these essences, and the essences change the rooms. So you basically, by getting this essence, you can add that into the room. And now the room has the buff that it normally has, plus it has the essence buff. And these buffs work in outside world content. They work in dungeons. They work in rifts. They don't just, in the Heliquary raids, they don't just work for doing Castle Sayangar stuff. They work everywhere. So it's interesting. Like Liz is absolutely right that they are it's one of the cooler features of the play.
Yeah, I really think that's a really neat idea. So yeah, steal it, go for it, do it, WoW devs.
Yeah,
I mean we've seen Warcraft steal ideas from Diablo before, so
Transmog.
Yeah, let's do this thing. Let's do it.
Just steal everything. But at this point, we're going to move on to doing some questions. As is usual, we're going to do the thing where I tell you that if you have a question for the show, you can send it to podcast@blizzardwatch.com with the subject line podcast or Blizzard Watch, so we know it's for the show. Otherwise, Joe's really gotten good at staring contests. Like, I can't beat him anymore.
It's true. I've perpetually moistened my eyes with eye drops, so Matt can't win anymore. I got tired of losing.
It's like he's just been totally destroying me, and I can't get him back to the thumb wrestling where my freakishly huge and strong thumbs have an advantage. It's just all staring contests now. So yeah, please let us know what show you want it for, and you can use our Discord. We've got 2 channels in Discord. One's for Patreon patrons. It's called the Patreon Q and Podcast Questions channel. And there's just the Q and Podcast Questions channel for non-patrons because we appreciate you guys too. It's not a competition. We love you both. Also, you can send us emails at podcast@blizzardwatch.com. So there's lots of ways. You can find your way to us. But right now, this week, I am Vaseline eyes. So I am going to have to actually ask these guys to read things. I'm going to start with Liz.
Okay, well, this first question is actually 3 questions in a trench coat, one for each of us.
That sounds like Tetsemi.
Yes, that is Tetsemi. Asking question for the Blizzard Watch podcast. Matt, what 3 dinosaurs match up to the tank, healer, and DPS trinity?
Some form of various armored dinosaur. I mean, there's ankylosaurs. There's, the various stegosaurids. There's the various ceratopsians. I'm going to say that I'm going to go with Ankylosaurus itself. It was the largest of the ankylosaurids, was the most heavily armored dinosaur to live. Like there was never anything with more armor on it than Ankylosaur. Big tail club for smashing things. Very hazardous even for things like Tyrannosaurus. Like T-Rex, who would hunt Triceratops, would usually avoid Ankylosaurids. There are not many Ankylosaurid bodies with T-Rex bite marks on them. So I'm definitely going with Ankylosaurus for the tank. For the healer, I'm going to possibly say there's a lot of different options here, but I'm going to go with Gaiasaurus. I mean, not Gaiasaurus, Maiasaurus. Sorry. Otherwise known as Mothersaurus, the mother dinosaur. The first dinosaur that we found with eggs that had young in them, the first dinosaur that we could prove actually raised live young, just feels right. Going with that for the healer. I mean, quite honestly, dinosaurs didn't do a lot of social stuff. Like they didn't actually sit down and treat each other's wounds or anything. So I'm kind of going with that. And as for DPS, I mean, any predatory dinosaur. I mean, there are a lot of them. They all ate meat. They all killed stuff. Which you put in one you like. I mean, if I'm doing it, well, one time I remember watching a paleontologist from the Royal Tyrrell, which is a really big, very famous dinosaur museum up here. He was doing commentary on Jurassic Park 3 when they had the Spinosaurus fight the Tyrannosaurus. And he said, this is, of course, a ridiculous match. It's a juvenile. The fact that they feel the need to pit these dinosaurs against each other, it's, there's much more interesting things to talk about. And of course, T-Rex would totally win. Because it would. The T-Rex's skull is ridiculously overbuilt. It had jaws for days. It was the strongest bite on a terrestrial animal ever. If you put every time they put T-Rex up against something in a movie like the Spinosaurus or Giganotosaurus, always these animals were even bigger. It doesn't matter if they were bigger. They didn't weigh as much. T-Rex's bones were heavier. Its jaws were stronger. It was completely loaded with muscle, more muscle. Its neck was like a pit bull neck. It was this big, solid mass of muscle, much more so than Giganotosaurus. And its teeth were designed to crush bone. If you put any of these other dinosaurs up against T-Rex, T-Rex would bite them once and it would be over. So T-Rex, that's the one I'm going to put. You could pick any one you wanted and it would be probably just as good. You want to throw in Dakota Raptor? Sure. You want to throw in Allosaurus or Saurophaganax or, I already mentioned Giganotosaurus. They're all fine choices. Acrocanthosaurus? Absolutely. But I'm going with T-Rex because I like T-Rex. And I'm done.
Okay, the next part of Tetsemi's question is for Joe. Favorite NPC that you run in your Shadowrun campaign?
Oh, wow. Okay, so
Baba Yaga.
She's up there. So she's not my favorite. Well, she is, but not. It's like choosing my children. So Baba Yaga as Mama is always one of my favorites because it's usually a surprise when players get to understand that it is Baba Yaga. Just because, one, she's my favorite folk folklore character. She's my favorite cryptid, essentially, that has ever existed. And I love using her every chance I get. And the idea of her being present in a world that's dominated by fantasy crashing into high science fiction and sort of like high technology always fascinated me, because I always wondered how would these characters of myth and legend sort of like evolve or adapt into a world in which they found themselves now kind of able to walk around without any sort of fear. And I like the fact that literally one of her children is a fixer, which I just have a blast with. But my absolute favorite is Eatman. So kind of a sappy and sad thing in here, but it's kind of how I let a memory of a dear friend of mine live on. So when I was younger, I played in a Shadowrun game with my friend Eli, who ran just some bonkers games. Eli and Matt would have gotten along famously with some of the weird stuff that Eli used to pull. Case in point, when, a little random aside, the party of us were trying to run away in an anime-based game from a bunch of mecha robots that were trying to kill us, essentially. We were trying to steal a car as a getaway. We opened up a car, and there was nothing but a potted houseplant sitting on the driver's seat. We immediately shut the door, said, hell nah, and went and found something else, because that's the type of games that Eli would run. So Eli passed away many, many years ago, suddenly and unexpectedly. But when we were going through his stuff, we realized that he had cataloged every single game session that we had played from 1993 up until the time of his death. So like a decade and some change. So the group of friends that because we all played a bunch of games together, sort of not, I hate to say divvied up his stuff, but his family didn't want him. They were just going to get rid of it. And he didn't have any kids. So we each took games that meant the most to us. And Shadowrun was that game for me, because it was this melding, this first experience that I had with like science fantasy. And it was thanks to Eli. Eli had a Netrunner character that he played, Eatman. And he would always break it out as sort of like our go-to guy or one of our contacts or whatever. And he was just always so animated. It represented like a break from all of his inhibitions, because he was a very shy person in real life. And it was through this lens that he could be that character and be like his ideal version of himself. So now that I've taken over the Shadowrun game, and it is something that I'm continuing on and incorporated all of his stuff into my world, Eatman is my favorite NPC, because by keeping that character alive, I keep that memory of my really good friend alive and a world that he helped create. So hands down, my favorite NPC.
Man, how can any of us follow up with how can we follow up on something like that?
Sorry.
Okay, I'm gonna try. Except Tetsumi has asked me like a silly question and a serious question. The first question is Texas just the Barrens pre-cataclysm? And I actually do have an opinion on this that is not a joke opinion, which is that no, the interesting thing about Texas is that it's so massive that you find a little of every ecosystem here. There is desert, there are flat plains. I am in the Texas Hill Country, Central Texas, which is all rolling hills covered in trees with the Colorado River flowing in the middle. There are mountains if you go out west, and there's the Gulf Coast, which has beaches. You have like anything you want, you will find in Texas. So, I mean, the Barrens is, barren. It's maybe more like the Barrens after Cataclysm, when it gets more variety. You have, kind of your wild, lush spaces, and then you have your desert, stark desert spaces. And I guess you do have some coastal area, but no, Texas is like, it's like 6 states in a trench coat. It's just everything all bundled together, and they call it one state.
Also, I'm going to throw in here that's kind of insulting to the Barrens in terms of how the place is run.
Yeah, maybe. Though I don't know that any of the management in World of Warcraft zones is actually very good either. But yeah, we're not Okay, that's all I got to say about that. Not going there. We're talking about video games. Yeah. And the second question, the not joke question, is what game other than WoW have you felt had the best healer that matched your play style, aka the Wrath Holy Paladin pre-Cataclysm changes? And this one isn't one that I really have a good answer for. So I'm gonna throw it to both of y'all, but I would say I really like the Lord of the Rings Online Bard. It's been a long time since I've played Lord of the Rings Online. I do not play a lot of MMOs because I just don't have the time or mental energy to like play and learn and level and, play at a decent level. So I really focus on playing WoW, and I can do that. Like, I have the time and energy to do that and like learn it to where I'm good. And most of like the single player stuff I do is not the sort of stuff that has healing classes. You're playing a single player RPG. Well, okay, you're the person who has to shoot things and hide from things, and you tank and you DPS and you drink potions, and that's kind of the whole thing.
I brought Win. Why am I healing it? That's what Win is for.
So yes, if I had to answer, I'd say Lord of the Rings Online Bard, but man, it has been a long time since I played Lord of the Rings Online. So I'm going to ask you two, since I don't have a good answer. Joe, do you have an answer?
Yep, I do actually. And this is one that I was talking about actually in our guild Discord like a month ago. Esper from Wildstar was my favorite healer in an MMO, period. Hands down. I liked the idea of like combining maneuverability with healing. I enjoyed the concept of negotiating like where your AoE is to get the healing done. And like, it just felt like a very dynamic, very exciting healing class. And, that's one of the reasons why I play a lot of Shaman. For me, there's a lot of stuff I can do besides just healing. But like, that's a lot of fun. The one that has come second to that by it's been pretty close is healing as a bard in Final Fantasy XIV, which I really, really enjoy. Not only because I'm playing a bard, I'm a giant, strong bunny woman with really great hair and a really cool cloak. But I also learned, and this is a non sequitur, and this is not necessarily why, well, it is kind of why it's my favorite healing class. I learned in Final Fantasy XIV, if you hook up a MIDI controller to your computer, you can translate MIDI instructions to the actual game itself to play music via the Bard commands. So I can literally sit here in real life with my guitar through my MIDI pedal in my computer and play guitar in Final Fantasy XIV as the Bard, which instantaneously makes it one of my favorite healer classes.
That's amazing.
All right, Matt, you're up.
I mean, if we're talking about MMOs, City of Heroes, in my opinion, had a really good healer mechanic.
Ooh, yeah.
In that you could kind of be a healer full stop, or you could kind of be a controller, or like a kind of similar to the idea of a disc priest, where you could have a healer who was less about healing and more about preventing damage, or like the pain domination power. That's the one I really remember.
The aliens, the light alien had a healing spec too, didn't it?
Yeah, I think so.
Why can I not remember the name of
the one I really remember was the mastermind. The masterminds and corruptors had pain domination.
Yeah,
and it's cool because it was basically just heals, but it was based around the idea of, instead of actually healing people, you were just preventing them from feeling the pain of it. So you were kind of a jerk. I mean, because they're still hurt. You're just making it so they don't know they're hurt, and it's kind of like creepy. But I like that mechanic. I thought there were a few others. I think in general, the way City of Heroes worked with that kind of thing is you have subset powers. So you could be like a fully fleshed out damage dealing type and yet also be a healer.
Yeah, you could take your primary, secondary, and tertiary powers and revolve them all around healing if you wanted to.
Yeah,
or
absolutely.
You could diversify. Yeah, nothing has really come close to City of Heroes in that regard.
But in terms of single player games, did either of you guys play the original Fable?
Yes, actually, quite a bit.
Wow, it's been a very long time. I don't remember anything about it, but I did play it.
Okay, there's a specific power set in Fable that it's like a healer spec, but it's basically you can put up this shield around your character. And as long as the shield is up, you don't take damage. The shield takes the damage. So if something hits you, it just goes to the shield. But the shield is basically a mana sponge. Like, if it gets hit, it takes damage, your mana drops. When your mana goes to 0, the shield fails. So if you happen to have a ton of mana potions, you can literally just chug mana potions and never get hit. Which means that your character never gets scars. Never takes any of that. Because remember, as they got more older and more powerful, their faces would change. If you got hit a lot, you'd get a lot of scars. But if you had the shield up, you never got hit, technically. Things were hitting you, but the shield was just taking it, and you'd just pop a potion, because you could pop them whenever you wanted. So instead of using your health potions, you could just use the far more plentiful mana potions and never take damage. I loved it. That was my absolute favorite healing spec ever, because it, technically speaking, I didn't heal ever. I didn't use the healing spells, and I didn't use the healing potions. I didn't even need to keep healing potions, which was, again, because they were far less common. Like, I think it was something like 5-1 in favor of mana potions.
Yeah,
and
like
so
that.
I just kept that one spell. I got it to max rank, and I just used the mana potions to keep it up when I was in combat, and just mowed things down with a giant sword, and I never even had to block. I never had to learn how to block. I never had to learn anything other than pure offense, because my heal was this shield, and the shield never went down. So I never took damage. I trivialized half of that game, because the other thing it had was in the same school, it had a slow time thing where you could push that, and everybody around you, it was like the Sandevistan in Cyberpunk. Everything around you would go to like 1/2 speed, and you just zip around behind them and hit them while they were trying to figure out where you went. And if they did hit you, you didn't take any damage anyway. So the spell didn't get interrupted. I loved it. It was completely ridiculously broken. It was, if this existed in an MMO, it would get nerfed the first day. But since it was a single player, clever use of game mechanics. Boom. I like that one. But the City of Heroes one is my MMO example, with honorable mention to Star Wars: The Old Republic, which also kind of had some cool stuff with Jedi Consulars. And the Sith, whatever the Sith wizard was, they had some interesting stuff. And the medic. The medic was a character who would actually shoot you with a chain gun full of healing.
Yes, I remember that. That was fantastic.
Yeah, that was fun too. So yeah, but that's it. Those are mine. Joe?
I did mine already. Oh, question?
Yeah, question time.
Yeah,
next question.
Sorry. Woo! This one comes from Annabelle. Since this is spooky month, TM, what are your favorite scary games? Do you go in for the gory survival stuff, or are you more than content to play a cozy builder with pumpkins and a black cat companion? I have a Void in real life now, so I can play spooky games while Void is within arm's reach. I personally am a mix of both. There are some times where I really like some very disturbing and gross games. There's some where I really like story-driven, atmospheric games, and there's some that I just like cozy vibe games. One of my favorite horror games, and I will argue with anybody who tells me it is not a horror game, is System Shock 2. It is one of my favorites. It is dystopian, futuristic, and but still have all the horror vibes. And I'm super here for it. Alien Isolation is one of my other all-time favorite ones, because I like the Alien franchise in general. I just think it's a good franchise. And 2, I like the way that the game plays up the fact that you are isolated on a space station, and plays up that atmosphere. Like, there's some jump scares, and it is a very deadly game, but most of the time, it's just the fact that you are scrambling to find a solution that and pressing that anxiety that does it. And I like the fact that you can solve all of those problems. And so, like, I definitely dig that. And then one of my favorite ones that's very story driven, that's really good, that I know some people play, but I don't know how many people played. And if you haven't played it, you should. There's a game called Oxen. And it's a cabin in the woods style horror game where friends go to a remote island for a party. But once they basically get onto the island, weird, spoopy things start happening, and it turns into a supernatural thriller that really switches between paranormal horror and a relaxing adventure game while still telling a story. I remember it just being absolutely just blowing my mind when I got to the end of it, and the implications therein. So well worth the play if you haven't. What about you, Liz?
I'm not really into classic horror games. As I've gotten older, I've become like jump scares and really bloody, gory stuff bothers me more. And I can't explain, is that because it's gotten more realistic, or is that just because I have more life experience and this is actually terrifying and I don't like it? So I avoid all of those things, probably more atmospheric stuff. When I think Anna's gonna like this answer, because when I think about games that genuinely creep me out and frighten me, probably one of the biggest ones is Subnautica.
Oh yeah.
Because like I have like this genuine fear of the water, which I can't quite explain. Like I have this anxiety about things hiding under the water when there's water you can't see through. And Subnautica is like, that's my kryptonite. This like terrifies me, playing through this game where you're swimming underwater and sometimes the water is clear and blue and you see the sunshine coming through.
And sometimes there's a Leviathan.
Colorful fish. And then all of a sudden you're swimming through dark, murky water and something attacks you out of nowhere and you can't see it and you're trying to run away and that's my feelings about Subnautica. That's the first thing that comes to mind, actually. And Anna, of course, got me started playing Subnautica, and then it was just freaking me out, so I stopped for a while, except there's apparently, like, an upscaled version for PS5.
Yeah.
And now I'm like, oh no, I have to go back and see how beautiful and terrifying it is.
And I highly recommend playing it either with headphones or if you have a sound bar, do it.
Oh no. Oh no. That sounds even worse. Another game, I've actually been playing through Dishonored again, which I love Dishonored. I love the Dishonored series. And it's not necessarily a scary game, but it has this creepy atmosphere and this inherent horror concept to it, where there's this terrible plague ravaging the city that makes people bleed from the eyes. And it's like it doesn't focus on that. That's almost like a story far in the background. You don't see a lot of it. You see a few like zombie type people who are in the last stages of disease, but you can avoid them all. Like it has this whole horror concept, but it's so far in the background. And it's kind of interesting. It's moody and atmospheric, and it has this sort of creepy, twisted steampunk world. And that's a really fun one. I also enjoy like the stealth combat, because I find stealth games are kind of have this like stressful tension to them where you're like trying to hide, but someone might see you at any moment. So I like games like that. I like kind of atmospheric games.
Well, that's your turn, Matt.
Well, my problem here is the same problem I have with horror TTRPGs, in that I tend to inherently go along with the idea that Robert E. Howard had, that one person's horror is another person's action adventure. Like, there was a round robin story that infamously both H.P. Lovecraft and Howard were writers on, and Lovecraft wrote the penultimate chapter and Howard got the final chapter. At the end of Howard's chapter, his narrator is transported mentally from his human body through space and time and into the body of a crab monster on some alien world. And he's horrified because now he's a crab monster in some vast alien place surrounded by other alien beings that look like crab monsters that he can't communicate with or understand. And that's Lovecraft presented this as horror, like, an horror of alienation, horror of, your body no longer being what you expected or want it to be, so forth and so on. As soon as Howard picked it up, that dude snapped and started murdering the other crab people who were too placid and used to their great society to fight back. And he became king of the crab people. And it's like, you took the horror premise and you just went suddenly it's Diablo here, buddy. And that's kind of my problem. That being said, there is one game that managed to keep me from getting down that train. It wasn't Diablo. It wasn't Resident Evil. it was Eternal Darkness, Sinity's Requiem.
Yeah,
it is the
that
best
was such
horror
a good game.
in the world. There's never been a better one. There never will be a better one, because if you look at the Resident Evil games, those games basically either they veer too far into action because they give you a lot of guns that you can kill things with, or they veer too far into running away simulator where you can't do anything. Eternal Darkness gives you things you can do. You can fight, you can explore, and so forth, but your own mind is turning against you in the game, and you never know if what you're seeing is real or a hallucination or like an evil, monstrous nightmare thing that is making you hallucinate. And I think it's just one of the best horror games I've ever seen. It's only one of the very few that actually made me scared.
Yeah, it also did a lot of meta stuff too. Like, it was one of the first games to like really mess with you and try to mess with the technology. I'm really mad that we're never gonna, like, the sequel got canceled, Shadows of the Eternals.
Yeah, it didn't make it.
Yeah,
they tried doing a Kickstarter, but that didn't happen.
Well, Nintendo still owns the rights to it, which is why Night Dive Studio also wanted to remaster it. I'm sorry, this is like a tangent, but I love this game. Night Dive Studio wanted to remaster it, and Nintendo put a huge stop on it, and I'm real mad about that.
Yeah, basically, people have said that Eternal Darkness is similar to Resident Evil, and it is, but in that's only in concept. Like, when you describe it, it is not that different. When you play it, it is
wildly different. Yeah.
Yeah. And it is, in my opinion, one of the best horror games I've ever played. The other one that I would mention that I think it's a pretty solid horror game is actually not, I don't think, strictly speaking, is intended to be a horror game, but it's the Kirby games.
That is, yeah, it's nightmare fuel if you think about it too long.
Yeah, if you actually sit down and think about the Kirby games, at one point there's one stage in the Kirby games that is clearly set in an Ice Age frozen post-apocalyptic post-nuclear war Earth.
Just the whole new game, the game that just came out, is literally nothing but post-apocalyptic Earth as you're rolling around as Kirby that has transcended time and space. It is bleak.
It is bleak and weird. And yeah, Kirby games are freaky. And I honorable mention to Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines, the original.
Yeah.
The sequel, I've heard nothing about it in 2 years, so who knows if that's ever going to happen. But the original, I mean, some of the horror comes from the terrible graphics because the game was designed 2 decades ago and just does not look good anymore and has not gotten a remaster and probably never will. But the storyline does a really good job of translating the whole World of Darkness idea, and it is actually genuinely, I would say, squicky. I don't actually get scared playing it, but I am grossed out a few times, and that's hard for me. I don't get grossed out very easy. So yeah, I'd give that an honorable mention. But that's it for me on that one.
Yeah, I mean, and this is the time of year too where one should definitely be looking at I mean, if you're into that type of thing, horror games are definitely popping up. Just to throw it out there, and I know we mention it occasionally, Game Pass, I think, actually has a bunch of horror games that are releasing this weekend, or at least coming back onto it, or have been re-released onto it for the season. So it's worth looking into those. There's some new old style ones that have been releasing, like Infernax, which is adventure horror, but still very much Cronenbergian in its horror. But there's some really good options there. I don't know. That's one thing I definitely am looking forward to having some more time, because I just want to sit down and play some more spoopy games.
Oh, I have an honorable mention: Speed Dating for Ghosts. I love that game. I love that game. Have either of y'all played this game, or are you just laughing because of the name?
No,
I've seen
stuff from it. And I'm not laughing to mock it. I'm laughing because it's perfect.
It is.
It's amusing. Okay. It's not a game that scares me, but it's a cool game. It's funny. It's cute.
It's not a scary game, but it's one of those games. It can be genuinely heartwarming and sweet, and it can be really sad, and it has some creepy stuff to it too. It's not going to scare you. It did make me cry.
I feel that way about Monster Prom and Monster Prom 2, straight up.
Speed Dating for Ghosts is one of those games I would recommend for both Halloween and Valentine's Day, and everyone should go play it. Everyone should play it. It's fantastic.
I'm down with that.
Also, if you want to play, if you're looking for a TTRPG, Monster Hearts and Monster Hearts 2 are both really cool. as is Monster of the Week. Which these are all kind of powered by the Apocalypse games.
Well, Monster of the Week
Also,
is, for sure.
But there's also iHunt, which is basically, would you like to do a Buffy the Vampire Slayer style game, but you're in the gig economy, so you basically have an app, and it's just as horrifying as you think, but not for the reasons you might think. I think we're going to move on, though, and be done, unfortunately, because I wanted to get Joe to get to read this last one, but he can push that to the next Lore Watch if he wants to.
Well, I mean, no, you're talking about the one from Corey or the one from KTS?
No, we got one from Korn. Remember Korn? Your friend Korn?
Oh, no, I don't see it in here.
It's further down. I had to follow up because it came just as I sent this. So it's the next one in.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we'll do that next time.
Yeah.
Or we'll do it on Lore Watch, one or the other.
I mean, if you guys want to do the Corey one, it's pretty fast for me, so.
Yeah, Corey, I was just going to throw it out there. Corey wanted to know what we're dressing up for Halloween if we've chosen a costume. My 4-year-old niece chose my costume. I'm going as Jean Belcher from Bob's Burgers because she wants to be Luis. What about you guys?
Liz?
I'm not dressing up. I mean, I should probably think about my Halloween transmog, but I haven't figured that out yet either.
I haven't dressed up for Halloween in about 37 years. So I will be playing the role of Guy hiding in his office while his wife and mother-in-law and dog give treats out to people because I am terrified of people and don't want to be around them. So in a way, it's very appropriate for Halloween because you guys are the zombies and I'm scared of you. Okay, I guess that does it. There's one more question, but I think we will possibly deal with that later or not at all because we're pretty much out of time here by about 10 minutes. Joe's got a thing to say, and then I have a thing to say, and then we're all going to go. So,
all right. Blizzard Watch is made possible due to the generous contributions at patreon.com/BlizzardWatch. Your continued support means this podcast site and community is able to thrive and grow. Blizzard Watch supporters enjoy exclusive benefits like early access to the podcast, a better chance at having your question answered on our podcast or the queue, and an ads-free site experience.
Thank you, Joe. And thank you also, Liz, for being here and for giving me that speed dating for ghost game I'd forgotten exists, and now I'm looking at it going, yeah, that's that thing. No, that thing's legit. I'm not kidding.
It's so good. So good.
But if you guys have a question for the show, remember you can send it to podcast@blizzardwatch.com, or you can go to our Discord and go to the Patreon Q and Podcast Questions channel if you're a patron, which you should be because it's totally awesome. We're rad. You'll be rad. Just come be rad. But if you can't, we understand. And we also have the Q and Podcast Questions channel for non-patrons because you guys count too, and we love you very, very much. This has been the Blizzard Watch podcast. Thank you to Joe and Liz and all of you for being here, and we'll see you next week, hopefully on Tuesday.